sort of start to do. You can go ahead and start introducing yourselves in the chat, your name, pronouns, and state, even location within the state. Um, and just a heads up, as you just heard, this meeting is being recorded for people who couldn't make it. Next slide, please. Um, All right, or this slide. This Power Hour is an orientation to Chesapeake Climate Action Network, or CCAN, and we're going to talk about four main things. We're going to talk about the who, as in who we are at CCAN, who are our staff, who are our volunteers, and who are we together as a movement for climate justice. The what are our priority campaigns across the organization? We'll talk about the why. Why did you join CCAN? Apologies, these are out of order. What action did you take? What's keeping you up at night? And we'll have some brief discussion and popcorning and a little interactive exercise. And we will also talk about the how, which is primarily going to be done through breakouts by state or district, region. Um, and you're going to fill out a little bit of a survey about how you want to get involved and have more of a discussion about things that are going on in our respective regions to learn how you can play a critical role in our work. And we're going to address any questions that you have during the breakouts. So just a note about that. So please write down your questions so you don't forget them because we're going to kind of keep moving through the first half of this presentation. I'm excited to introduce my fellow CCAN team members on this call and invite them to share their names, pronouns, and titles.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Beth Landry. My pronouns are they, them. I'm joining you tonight from Tacoma Park, and I am the Central Maryland Grassroots Coordinator for CCAN, representing with Montgomery County and Prince George's County. I'll pass it to Mustafa.
Hi, everyone. Mustafa, he, him. I'm the Director of Campaigns and Strategies at CCAN, and I support our wonderful organizers across the region with their grassroots campaigns.
Thank you both so much. And again, we would love to get to know you. So keep these introductions coming in the chat. Please write in the chat your name, your pronouns, if you feel comfortable sharing them, what city and state you're calling in from, and maybe if you would add a sentence or two about what's motivating you to get more involved with CCAN. You'll have the chance to share more in the chat throughout the presentation in just a little bit. And later in the meeting, as I said, we'll be doing breakouts, so you'll have a chance to meet other people in your state later on. And there we go. All right, I'm going to turn things over to Beth.
Right. Thank you, Ting. So just now you should be seeing a picture of a bunch of us, including those of us who are here leading the call tonight. It's a picture of 25 or more of the staff that we have that work with us. We are an organization that punches significantly above our weight, but it's good to explain why that is. We are a regional organization with organizing staff in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, and we also have folks who work at the federal level. So we do work in the local and state level, but also at the federal level with our team, and they focus on lobbying legislators and agencies. Our campaign and advocacy teams work hand in hand with our communications folks, our development folks, and executive leadership. And we're building our dynamic organization that has a voice on the local, state, and national stage. But really, our goal is to work ourselves out of a job. The number one thing that we care about is helping volunteers like yourselves get ready to build a powerful grassroots movement to stay involved and keep building that. And one of the ways that we do that is with our action teams. And you can see the map there of the different areas that we have represented for our action teams. These are semi-autonomous volunteer-led groups that work within geographically relevant areas with an organizer to develop a purpose statement. They have their own priorities and leadership structures that empowers them to take on leadership roles and drive our longer term power building and the execution of key campaign tactics. So these teams set their own pace for meetings, it's usually every month or so, and develop their own decision-making structures. We empower those volunteers to take on significant work and to drive the work in their respective communities. So, as you can see there, we have a span in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, with Maryland having Anne Arundel County, which is new and being developed, and it's aimed to be launched in the next year or so, as well as our Baltimore area action team, our CCAN Eco MoCo action team, and our newly in formation Prince George's County team. In Virginia, that's the 757 action team, which is in Hampton Roads, Nova New Leaf in Northern Virginia, and Richmond. And across all of those teams, our priorities, next slide, are several different priorities, but stopping the build out of dirty data centers is one of the top things for us. Also, to stop out the building of fossil fuel infrastructure generally, advancing legislation to make polluters pay for their contributions to the climate crisis, as well as increasing and expediting investments in renewable energy. And lastly, helping to lower costs, lastly, but not least importantly, lowering costs for poor and working class families to be able to afford the transition to electrification and clean energy. And one of the other really cool programs that we have, next slide, is our invasive vines program. Some of you might be familiar with this. In Southeast DC, they're focused on removing vines from trees, both in parklands, but also on residential properties. And they do events weekly on Wednesdays and Saturdays. In Langdon Park in DC, they're focused on uprooting and cutting vines from the parkland. So Meredith is your key contact there if folks are interested in something like that. And then we don't have anyone joining us tonight from our staff for the federal team, but I did want to give them a shout out. The federal team advocates for funding for research on solar geoengineering, a strengthened and improved FEMA to help communities that are getting hit by extreme weather events, fighting back against Trump and Congress's clean energy, climate, and environmental regulatory rollbacks, and campaigning against climate immunity waivers. So these issues are really important to me, especially when it comes to things like data centers and the building out of fossil fuel infrastructure. You know, data centers are a huge driver for increasing energy costs and a major source of emissions, and they're toxic to our environment. That also infrastructure is being driven by billionaires who want to fast track those projects and have the details about them stay in the dark and to make as much money as possible while passing off as much of the cost as they can to us. I don't think it's democratic or fair. So definitely get in contact with the federal team if you're interested. And they have a petition that they're interested in signing that we can share when we're in the breakouts. So that's a few of the things that we've been working on, but Mustafa is going to keep it going and talk about values that are driving you. I'll hand it over to Mustafa.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. So I wanted to take just a few minutes to talk about this with you all. It's likely that you signed up to join CCAN because you share our values, you're interested in one of our priority campaigns. And I would just love to take a few minutes to hear from you all. You could post in the chat, or you could just come off of mute and just share with us why you decided to take this action, why you decided to get plugged into CCAN or sign that petition. I'd love to hear more about that. And Beth and Ting, if you could just help pay attention to the chat and flag anything that gets shared there, that'd be great.
Not seeing anything in the chat yet. If there's anyone who wants to
Hello.
share.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to say I actually saw an ad on Facebook that y'all had for one of your invasive vine clearings, and I was like,
Nice.
I have the time right now. I should go do something that's outside. So I did that, and y'all are doing great work. So I wanted to keep g doing stuff with y'all.
That's
That's cool,
amazing.
Angelica.
Thanks for sharing that, Angelica. Yeah. Anybody else want to share?
I'm seeing in the chat from Jim, climate change is going to kill us all. Got to do something. So I think that's a shared sentiment among many of us as well.
That's right. That's right. Um, sure. Jamie, do you remember one of our lovely volunteer leaders? Do you remember how you first got plugged into CCAN?
I moved from Bermuda and I looked online for something that caught my eye as an organization, and I saw CCAN, filled out a form or something, but Xander ended up calling me and got me down to my first action was um, protesting at DEQ for Reggie. Do you want me
Yeah.
to go on about lobbying?
Not quite yet.
Well, we can come back to that, but protesting, so that you were protesting at the Department of Environmental Quality to get the Virginia back into Reggie to help companies to make companies pay for their offsets in terms of their carbon emissions, which is amazing. So that was probably a while ago. That was maybe a few years ago.
A couple.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share? So hearing from Angelica, the protecting our green spaces, removing invasive vines, helping our trees grow. Trees are major protector for our climate and particularly from extreme heat, but also certainly help with our carbon emissions. And the same thing for Jim. Jim, you are I know you are so driven and obsessed and challenged by the climate crisis and the grave concerns that it presents for our future. And same thing with Jamie. These are the various examples given are a range of things that people can get plugged into within CCAN. But also we have a wide range of campaigns and programs because the climate crisis is a big crisis and it intersects with so many different challenges that our communities face. And so thanks you all for sharing that. I want to go into an example, and Jim, I'll invite you to hop off of mute in just a moment, but to share as well. I wanted to go into and to share an example of what it looks like for us to be launching a campaign and how our volunteers get involved in these campaigns. So I'm going to take an example with the Renew Act study bill. This is our Make Polluters Pay legislation. And so last legislative session, our Make Polluters Pay legislation, the Renew Act study bill, it passed. Very, very exciting. We worked on it since, I think, 2024, and it required the state's comptroller's office to set aside money to conduct a study on climate impacts from big fossil fuel companies that have been doing business in Maryland for the last several decades. And so the governor vetoed the legislation, to our surprise, in May, and we knew immediately that we would need to be gearing up support for the Speaker and the Senate President to call for a special session to override the governor's veto. And so from August through December, our organizers focused on building teams of volunteer lobbyists and legislative districts across the state so that we could put pressure on electeds to call for a special session to override the veto. I think over the course of that program that our organizers almost got over 30 teams of volunteers from districts across the state to be doing that. And our organizers connected one-on-one with our volunteers. They talked to volunteers about their interests and what roles within the team they would take on, within the context of the lobbying team. And with volunteers taking the lead, we built over 24 volunteer lobbying teams in districts. That's right, over 24 throughout the state. And these volunteers organize themselves and their constituents, to do things like to email and to call legislators to ask that they support the veto override. And surprise, surprise, a lot of them, although some of them did respond, a lot of them didn't. So guess what? The volunteers organized, and they organized in district meetings with those legislators. And the efforts of our volunteers across the state resulted in Democratic leadership overriding the governor's veto on the study bill. So much appreciation to our volunteer leadership like Jim McGalliard, who didn't back down when the governor said no and kept the fight going. So I wanted to give, we're expecting the studies to expect to be completed by December, and we'll be prepared to run a bill implementing the outcomes of the study bill next year. So the study bill is going to tell us how much they need to be paying. We're hoping that we're just going to be doing the next step here with implementation. I want to give the floor to Jim McGalliard for a minute just to share a little bit about his role with helping to make this a reality. So Jim.
Yeah, so CCAN has been pushing the Renew Act to my knowledge, for at least 3 years. I had been a long time federal employee, couldn't do anything political. I retired, and all I had to do was show up for a meeting at CCAN in the church in Annapolis. They fed me pizza, and then they taught me on how to lobby my legislators. And I went to go see my legislators, who were all favorably inclined to climate stuff. So I went in 2024 on lobby night in the winter of 2024, and one of my delegates, Greg Wims, was going to co-sponsor the Renew Act, which he then did. And then in 2025, it came back. Now it had been there was an amendment so that it had started out in one form where we said up front what the dollar value was going to be that was going to be charged to the polluters. And then they changed it to this one, which requires a study where we find out how much it actually costs, which is what's going forward at this point in time. So I went again in 2025 in the winter and talked to Greg Wims again. He's a very friendly guy. I had never talked to my legislators before, but they're all very nice people and their staffs. And it was very easy to do. And I just asked. And then in 2026, there were 3, I think, priority bills that CCAN had. And I went and asked Delegate Wims if he would support those. And he said, yeah, I'll support all of them, which he has done. So it's been really easy. I just show up for things and get fed pizza, and then I go talk to the legislators. I'm provided with talking points. I know where to go now. I know my way around Annapolis a little bit. Mustafa had encouraged me to have and Dustin also encouraged me to have an ongoing relationship with my delegates. And to do that, I'm actually right now we're having an election. The primary's coming up in June. So I have been knocking on doors for some of my delegates who, when I've gone to them with these CCAN priority bills, have agreed they're going to support them and have supported them. So now I'm supporting them, knocking on doors for them.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Jim. And that's fundamentally the approach here, is that we're trying to invest in our volunteers to both develop the skills as well as to be building the relationships both with our other volunteers to get more folks involved, and then also to be building relationships with the decision makers to both encourage them and to hold them accountable. So thanks, Jen, for sharing that. I'm going to pass it to Ting.
Great. So in Virginia, we are building political power for the long term, and we are fighting back against fossil fuel proposals across our state, as well as fighting for data center reform and clean energy. We helped bring a wave of new climate-friendly legislators to Virginia last fall by getting our grassroots volunteers out to knock doors for the election, and we got a lot of good people elected. And we currently have action teams in Nova, Central Virginia, and Hampton Roads, each with their own volunteer-led campaigns and regional issues to plug into. Our Nova team, Nova New Leaf, is educating the public about data centers and the importance of equitable access to green spaces. In Central Virginia, RCAA members have been hard at work stopping fossil fuel projects and working on mobility for all. And our 757 Climate Action Team has just launched their Dirty Data Centers for Hampton Roads campaign, and we'll be working hard all summer to recruit more supporters for that. And our local action teams, as Beth talked about, are where volunteers like you can take on leadership, shape campaigns, and do creative tasks based on what you know how to do. So a lot of we can talk a lot about things that we have done in the past, but that doesn't mean that that's exactly what we'll do in the future, because so much of what we do is shaped by you, our volunteers. And I want to hand it over to one of my volunteers, Jamie. Jamie Bacon is from Northern Virginia, and will take a minute to share about her experience lobbying with CCAN Action Fund. Go ahead, Jamie.
So I highly recommend taking CCAN's lobby training because that really makes you feel comfortable with the idea of meeting with legislators. And I am very fortunate that I have I have a Democratic delegate, Paul Krizik, and a Democratic Senator, Scott Surville, who's also the majority leader in the Senate. So they, you know, it's easy pushing certain things with them, but I'm now lobby captain, and so I get a group together. And with Paul Krizik, we've had 2 lunches and we've had 2 breakfasts at IHOP, and then we meet him down in Richmond, and CCAN's even put the bill for some of our meals. Mostly with Scott Surville, it's with the chief of staff because he is a tad busy, but we do meet with him if possible when we go to Richmond to lobby. And I was real fortunate. I happened to see something from Climate Action Now almost a year ago about balcony solar and how Utah had passed a bill for balcony solar. And I said, Virginia needs this, and especially where I live, we need this. So I sent off a bunch of information to my delegate. We also had 2 meetings and resent him the information, and also sent it to Senator Surville, or his chief of staff. Long story short, Paul Krizik, and both Krizik and Surville were sponsors of the balcony solar bill in Virginia. And Paul got it across this finish line in the first year, which is kind of unheard of. I just learned that first year when bills are presented, that's called socialization, and you don't expect them to pass. But it passed, and the governor signed it. So we have balcony solar. And if you have a good idea, meeting with your delegate or your senator can have a big effect. And you can also get breakfast and lunch out of it.
Thanks so much, Jamie. Next slide. And now that we all have a taste, thank you, of what this organizing can look like with CCAN, we want to hear from some of you. I hope you know how to do this. Fill out this Menti, which is the QR code, or I can paste a link real quick in the chat if that's easier. Um,
Yeah,
and
you'll either go to the QR code or the link, and you'll type in the code that you see under the QR code on my screen here, and then you'll be able to enter your response. But go ahead, Ting.
yeah, yeah. So the link is in the chat, or you can use the QR code. And yeah, and we'll see what you'll respond to. So I'm going to give you a minute to do that. All right. This is good. It seems to be working. Wonderful. I see sharing ideas, connecting with neighbors, effecting positive change through direct action and long-term efforts as a team. Yes, advocating for green spaces. Awesome. Wanting to make a difference in helping the environment. Yeah. The advocacy training and learning to better understand the policy process of Annapolis. Yeah. Lobbying can sound daunting at first, and we promise it's really accessible. Um, Climate change is coming fast, killing people now. Yeah. Um, Legislating against data center pollution, super important in all of our regions. Learning about lobbying, helping with conservation, relationships with others who share similar values. Yeah, building community, not giving up on passing bills and legislation. And I'm seeing feeling powerless, but wanting to find. Can you scroll down, Mustafa? Thank you. Ways to fight. Yes. And advancing the use of renewable energy. Okay. So amazing. It seems like we have a lot in common. I love these responses and really resonate with so many of them. Um, and I would love it if you all could raise your hand to tell me if you could see yourself doing some of the things you heard described in the updates you heard from our volunteers. Raise your hand. Let's see, I'm going to look at the meeting. Jim, you can picture yourself doing the things that you talked about. That's good. Um, Angelica, Leslie, wonderful. Okay, yes. All right, several of you, wonderful. Thank you. Um, and I'm wondering, can I pick on somebody who raised their hands to share why really briefly, or like, or what? Which ones, what resonated with you or intrigued you and why? I'm going to pick on Leslie because I know Leslie a little bit. Leslie,
Hello.
can you come up and say
Sure. Hi. Do you hear
hi?
me okay?
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I kind of hit a point in my life where I'm like, I really want to be more hands-on in making a difference. And I just felt really energized with doing the Earth Day with Ting and her team. And just heard from so many people that, everyone's worried about the data centers. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm just really open to learning something new. I never saw myself as a lobbyist, but I think that's, I'm just open to learning how to do it and trying something new and just doing what I can really. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I know I was a volunteer for with CCAN for about 3 years before I joined the staff, and I tried a lot of new things. So I appreciate that. All right. I'm going to pass things over to Beth. I know sometimes the state campaign overviews feel like a lot and maybe inaccessible or unfamiliar, but we really want each of you to know that you have a role in this movement, and a lot of the nitty-gritty stuff will come later. So I just want to reassure you if some of that felt like a lot, there's, learning to do, but there's a place for everybody. I'm going to pass it to Beth.
Thank you, Ting, and my apologies there. I had tried to rearrange the bullet points and I didn't look like it captured my most recent thing, so I'm going to talk about this. Um, so we know, especially with what folks have been saying here, one of the biggest motivations for people going to events and whatnot is because a friend invited them or they knew someone who was going to be there. One of the key reasons that people like myself, I was a volunteer also with CCAN, like a decade ago. We keep coming back and staying involved with things, in activities that we're passionate about because we have relationships with people doing the same thing and have a lot in common with those folks and like hanging out with them. So we're going to go into breakouts, with joiners from each state where folks are joining from so we can meet and connect with everyone and find out the different values that you might have in common with others. Your organizers, myself and Ting, will be sharing the current campaign, a little bit more about the current campaigns anywhere that we're working on in each state and the ways that you can specifically get plugged in right now so that we can get closer to climate victories wherever that we are. It will have a semi-structured flow and will return.
We
Uh,
will not return. We will
yeah,
close for the
that
breakouts.
we're not going to return back to the main section. Sorry, that is also not up to date. We're not going to return back to the main plenary here. So when we're done, we will wrap up from there in the breakouts as soon as we have those set to go.